Good morning. I'm Peter Leach, Senior Editor of the Journal of Commerce, and it's been an incredible 3 days here, this being the third day. It's intense for us, and we really get a big kick out of this conference every year. It gets better every year. It gives me great pleasure to be here with you today to introduce this panel because the man who is moderating it is a longtime friend, Pat Moffett. He's been of enormous help to all of us reporters at the JOC because we value input from shippers who usually are very reluctant to talk on the record. But Pat has never had a problem with that. He is very outspoken on issues affecting his supply chain. He and his fellow panelists will discuss a supply chain solution called the Sea Truck Program that they've put into effect at VOXX International, which we used to call Audio VOXX. Let me introduce Pat Moffett, first of all, and he will introduce the other panelists. If you want more details on their careers, please refer to your programs where their bios are published. Pat?
Thank you. So I've been in the business for 50 years, which is very proud for me. I think it's a really big feat, and I'm very proud of it. But it wasn't always the way I thought I would make it through the business for 2 years. One being that I started with 2 rubber stamps, one non-negotiable, one original. And at $75 a week, it was 17 battery price, and I was working for Mitsui OSK line. Life was sweet. Had a pretty nice looking girlfriend, a nice jalopy car, and this was it? Rubber stamps? I'm in. I'll be international trade forever. Then one day I go by the water cooler, and there's a big oak table there. And a guy comes up, and he brings these 2 boxes up. They're really very heavy. I help him get the boxes up on the table, and I said to the guy, "What is this?" He said, "They're perforating machines." I said, "Perforating machines, what do they do?" He says, "Well, they punch holes in paper and they print out words." So what words do these print out? He said, "Well, one over here prints non-negotiable and the other one prints original." He said, "Once I plug these things in, that kid, the stupid kid in the back with the rubber stamps is pretty much out of work." Of course, the kid was me. I go to my boss, I said, "All right, listen, the jig's up. I know what's going on. What's happening here? I know you're going to let me go. Just let me go." He says, "No, we got a bigger thing planned for you. We have a new thing coming along invented by Malcolm McLean called containers. So we want to break into the container business. And we want you to be able to control the containers as we get in, lease them from other companies, and keep track of them as we get into the business a little bit bigger." Didn't have computers back then. All I had was a composition notebook. So off I went with my composition notebook, which I still save today. And the containers were okay. It was like 3 or 4 a ship. You could keep track of them. And then suddenly they started to be 8 or 10 a ship, and we added another service, and the containers coming back just too fast for me. I mean, I felt, if you ever see that film with Lucille Ball, when she works on the candy line and she has to put the candy in the box because she's trying to eat it, it was just coming too fast. Well, lo and behold, I lose a 40-foot container. Lost it in the book, couldn't find it on the pier. I was crushed. I said, "Oh boy, I'm going to be out of this job too." Went home that night, and I was sitting watching TV with my dad, and Eyewitness News comes on. And the reporter's name was Bill Butel. And he said, "You know what, up here in the South Bronx, it's amazing how the Latino community up here uses these ocean-going containers as their apartments. They actually live in them." And I piqued my interest, and I said, "Let me look at this." And there it was, the Mitsui OSK line's container with a family living inside, you know. I said, "Oh boy, at least we found the container, but this isn't going to get nasty." So next day I took the subway up, and we had cranes back then. We didn't have transtainers. We didn't have the equipment we have today. We got a chassis out there, old crane, and the container tilted and the door swung open. And I said, "Oh my God, if a family comes out with their furniture, the TV set, the kids, you know, this is going to be really embarrassing, you know." But there was nobody in it. We got the container back on the chassis, got off the news, and got it back to New Jersey. So now I'm back at my desk trying to get my composition notebook straightened out a little bit better. And then I see that another guy comes in with a big box. So what's that? He says, "That's a computer." I said, "Wow, a computer, I heard about these things. What's this one going to do?" He says, "It's going to keep track of containers because some stupid kid in the back lost a 40-foot container in the Bronx." The kid was me. So I said, okay, you know, enough of this. I volunteered for my own level in Vietnam, my own draft notice, went to Vietnam and came back. And when I did, I came back to JCPenney, which was one of my greatest training grounds that I think I've ever had. There you go. Better off in Vietnam with the 101st Airborne Division. When I came back, I went to JCPenney, and they needed someone that could sell ocean freight. This company, this outfit called, the program was called DISP, D-I-S-P. Anyway, and what this was if you had a standard pack as a buyer, you had to sell internally to a buyer. If you had a standard pack, which in the usually best case was jewelry boxes, 6 boxes to a carton, we would bring a container into Phoenix, into Ridgefield of the standard pack, and we would break those containers down and ship to all those stores and stay completely out of the JCPenney warehousing system. Of course, if you had pick and pack kind of things like ladies' shoes, stuff like that, it simply didn't work. It had to be standard pack kind of items. So I kept that in mind, and then as my career rolled on, I was at Lafayette Electronics for a couple of years. They went into bankruptcy, no fault of mine. No one was coming out with a machine. I had already been replaced twice, so I was pretty cool at that point. And then I got out to AudioVox, and one of the things that we were really short about AudioVox were car speakers. Big demand, especially our 6x9. We used to call it a Trivox 20 6x9 speaker. But we couldn't get them in, you know, the mini land bridge, and we were doing everything out of New York back in those days. We couldn't get them to New York fast enough. So with that, Flying Tiger actually made a sales call on me. Back then, the airlines used to come to the importers and sell them a program. And they sold it this Sea Air program. Sea Air program was, it used to come to Seattle by vessel. Flying Tiger would take it, put it in D containers, fly it to JFK. We'd pick it up at JFK, take it out to Long Island. It was sweet. It was like 60 cents a kilo, which we, you know, in our business today, we can't do a thing for 60 cents a kilo. But then it was a little pricey. It ate into the margins a little bit. But what happened with the magnets of the speakers, they were too powerful for the aircraft. So they started messing with the compasses of the 747. So you got a pilot thinks he's going to New York and he's going to Calgary somewhere. You know, I said, wait a minute, hold it. So they made it hazardous cargo. So they couldn't take as many speakers on the planes as they did at one time. So we said, you know, and eventually Flying Tiger was bought by Federal Express, who didn't like the program at all and just dropped out of it. So we said, you know what else can we do? There's got to be something expedited. Mini land bridge just wasn't for us. It wasn't working all that well. It wasn't dependable. We wanted something a little more solid. So we said, how about if we got a driver and a truck and we transload these goods in a container? Now we're in 1982 now. Remember the circle we're in. And move it on a truck, and the driver drives it across country. It's all cleared, backs into the building. We're in business. But that took too long, too, because it's one driver, and they had to follow the rules of the road that they can only work for so long. Some of them pushed it a little bit, and that just wasn't working out either. And we ran into a company called Consolidated Shippers. Consolidated Shippers is we have teams that do this, and we can be in New York in the 4th morning delivery out of Seattle. So we said, wow, this is really cool for us. Now we can get back into this. We're clearing customs. We're backing into our building. The big part was the timing, being able to deal with our buyers on the dates they had to have it, especially if you had breaking ads and things like that. They can actually frame that around the sea truck operation, which is what we came to name it. As a matter of fact, Peter Leach and I were talking about, after we started using that for the Sea Air for about a year, my first interview was a guy by the name of Keith Rockwell. And I still have that interview in my scrapbook at home with these things. So that's what the Sea Air did. It made me like, wow, Pat Moffat's a really smart guy. He got an airline to take these speakers across country. They were taking the speakers. I didn't think of that. That's all. You know, the airline came to us. But as I said, it kind of crashed a little bit. And that's what really got the program started into Sea Air. And that was really, by the time we're into that, we're kind of 1984, 85. And it really turned out to be a wonderful program, and still continues today to be so. And that was at about 1985 when the Sea Truck got in. And, you know, the 2 rubber stamps I had in the beginning, the non-negotiable original, I'm still down to 1 rubber stamp after 50 years in the business. So that's what I'm using now in case anybody wants to know. I'm behind the rubber stamp people. We're still a society together, you know. Just want to let you know. In any case, that's it for me for now. This is a little bit of introduction to give you how this came about, and a little bit, and just so you have a feel for what was going on in the 80s. And I know a lot of people here weren't born in the 80s. So as an old timer, I wanted to bring you right into focus and see where it came about, because we know a lot of companies do this. But we do it with a little bit of different precision. So now let me introduce to a woman that, I've traveled across the world, we all do for international logistics. I do a lot of work for Alzheimer's on a book that I wrote about my wife who passed away a number of years ago. So when I get a chance to do that and get a few vacation days, and I take off and I'll do some speaking engagement and then come back. Ladies and gentlemen, without this woman, I wouldn't be able to go from Long Island to Brooklyn, because she watches the department, she watches the Sea Truck program, among other things we do, works with our foreign manufacturers. The woman is just amazing, and there's just nothing she can't do. Without her, there wouldn't be a Pat Moffett hanging out with you guys today. So let me introduce to you Ms. Denise Oswald, the Assistant Vice President of International Logistics at VOXX International. Denise.
Good morning. Today I would like to offer some insight into the workings of the Sea Truck program that, as Pat had mentioned, AudioVox has been using for years when expediting ocean cargo is needed. You may find it to be beneficial for your company as well. We mainly use the Sea Truck services for shipments to our Indianapolis and Norfolk warehouses. It has helped us to meet sales deadlines we otherwise would have missed. Reasons to expedite vary. It could be that the supplier is running behind schedule, or perhaps there is a sudden increase in customer demand, or maybe even new product that we're looking to expedite. It is a means to make up time if needed. The advantages. Well, it is an alternative to air freight. Air freight can be cost prohibitive, especially if the volume of the expedited cargo is sizable. Sea Truck will offer you an alternative to this. You'll also get reduced inland transit time. We all know that mini land bridge transit time can vary, depending on how soon the containers move out from the discharge port onto the rail and at the multiple inland stops along the way. The ETA to the destination can be a moving target. If you have a 20-foot container, it may take up to 2 weeks pending pairing with another 20-foot container before it'll move out onto the rail. We recently had a 20-foot container bound for Chicago out of LA. It waited 10 days before it was paired with another 20-foot container to move out onto the rail. It also improves reliability within the supply chain. Accurate ETAs are key to an importer for meeting their sales commitments. With reliable partners, there is no guessing. The program is well organized with advanced planning. Based on the ETA to the port, you can effectively gauge when your product is going to arrive at the warehouse. And the reliable partners include not only our truck broker, who arranges for the trucking, but also our customs broker, who clears the freight in advance, 4 to 5 days in advance, as well as the freight forwarder, who arranges for the freight release in advance. So by the time the vessel actually reaches the port, the freight is fully released. So unless there are unexpected delays, ETA to the warehouse can be accurately determined. With Sea Truck, you'll get dedicated trucking with team drivers. You can expect third morning delivery to Indianapolis, fourth morning delivery to Norfolk. And the trailers can accommodate up to 90 cubic meters. So, depending on the cubic meters of your containers, there's a possibility to transload more than one container into a trailer. This is where your inland trucking costs can see some savings. When multiple containers are involved, the trailer consolidation benefits can be significant. You can get maybe two containers into one trailer, 3 40-foot containers into 2 trailers to help save on your inland transportation costs. We recently had 5 containers coming in on different vessels from different countries, arriving a day apart, and all 5 containers were transloaded into 3 trailers. So not only do we get an earlier receipt at the warehouse, but the difference in cost from Sea Truck service over mini land bridge service was considerably reduced because of the ability to consolidate into 3 trailers only. Why Seattle? Well, it is the closest U.S. container port from Asia with transit time advantages. It has 16 shipping lanes with some of the major carriers calling, including APL, Maersk, CMA CGM, K-Line, U.S. Lines, China Shipping, and Costco. And less congestion. With sea truck service, continuous uninterrupted movement of the cargo is essential in order to achieve optimum results. The biggest benefit with discharging in Seattle-Tacoma is less congestion, which in turn will minimize your cargo delay. Some terminals in LA and Long Beach will move their containers out of the yards if the yards become too full, without prior notification, which can result in dry runs for the trucker. This does not occur in Seattle. You can expect discharge and availability within 2 days of vessel arrival, oftentimes next day. Another benefit, no pier pass in Seattle as there is in LA. There is also mention of the possibility of increase in charges coming up on the pier pass in the upcoming months. LA has also had recent issues with chassis shortages. This does not usually occur in Seattle. You're not going to see that. This is not to say that discharge in LA for a sea truck cannot be accomplished. It can be accomplished at any West Coast port. Many times, if a vessel is running behind schedule or there is an urgent need for product, we may opt to divert a mini land bridge shipment, terminate it in LA, clear it there, and arrange for transload at that point. It works. It just may not be as optimal as if discharged in Seattle because of congestion delays. Terminals get advance notice of the nominated trucker picking up the cargo. Details of the expedited cargo, the vessel name, bill of lading number, container number, weights, and cubic meters are all sent to the truck broker, in our case it's Consolidated Shippers, who begin to monitor the vessel arrival and then plan in advance. If the cargo is especially in need of urgency, we will ask our forwarder to have the containers hot listed at the origin port with the carrier for priority stowage and quicker availability. We will also hot list it at the terminal on the U.S. side as well. So then all parties will monitor closely for the container availability, and once available, the drayage carrier will be there to pick up the freight. Transloading usually takes place within 1 to 2 days of vessel arrival. Long-haul trucks are scheduled to arrive at staggered, prearranged time, coordinated between the dray carrier and the warehouse. Again, another example of coordination set up in advance for continuous, smooth movement of the cargo. Transload warehouse is a very secure facility. The container seals are recorded and matched to the paperwork that they have been provided, and then they send tally sheets at the end of the transload, along with pictures if needed or if we request them. It's not uncommon to transload several containers in one day. The container seals are, the trailers are tightly packed to optimize loading capacity and then sealed. Once the trailer departs, the warehouse will send over a trailer load plan, which will include the carrier name, the container number, the number of cartons, trailer, truck, and pro numbers, as well as the scheduled appointment time, which is all forwarded over to the receiving warehouse. This also offers an opportunity for split shipping if needed. Sometimes not all of the cargo in the container is to go to the same destination. We may opt to take some of the cargo and drop ship it to a customer, or maybe split it up and send some of it to another receiving warehouse. This is an opportunity for us to tell the warehouse what's needed, give them the carton markings, and they will segregate it for split shipping as needed. All the long-haul trucks we use travel with team drivers, enabling for continuous movement of the freight. One driver may sleep while the other one drives. The freight keeps moving, which allows for the reduced inland transit time. They are sealed and secured and monitored by their dispatch team as well as the truck broker. Sea Truck allows for direct delivery to the warehouse at a scheduled appointed time. Oftentimes, the drivers will arrive the evening before, already at the warehouse when they open up their doors. Sometimes, if they're making exceptional time, they may even arrive the afternoon before, enabling for an earlier delivery if the warehouse is able to take it. And depending on the arrangements you make with your inland carrier, there is possibility to arrange for a drop trailer load instead of a live unload. We have this arrangement with our Indy deliveries. There is an extra cost for this service, but it does allow for the warehouse to unload at their own pace, which is especially helpful if they have several deliveries in the same day. You'll get the most benefit from your trucks, from the C-Truck service, if they travel over weekend hours. It's not uncommon, depending on the carrier and the schedule, it's not uncommon for them to arrive on a Thursday, transload on a Friday if it becomes available for transloading on a Friday, and then the delivery is Monday morning at the warehouse. The trucks are traveling over non-business hours. We recently had a shipment out of LA that was going to Orlando. The freight became available on a Friday morning. It was transloaded that afternoon and delivered Monday morning at 9 a.m. They made exceptional time on that one. Here you'll see a comparison of average cost versus transit time for shipments from Asia to our Indianapolis warehouse. Same freight, different modes. Air freight, of course, will afford the fastest transit time. However, it is the most cost prohibitive. While costs and transit times will vary, you can expect about approximately 1 week less transit for a more affordable increase in rates. Here is a comparison for shipments from Asia to our Norfolk warehouse. In this comparison, all-water service is represented instead of mini-land bridge, as that is the service that we normally use for our shipments to Norfolk, not mini-land bridge. As we are afforded lower shipping costs normally by shipping all-water, when there is the occasion for C-Truck, the additional premium costs for C-Truck service are offset by the benefits of shipping all-water regularly to Norfolk, our largest warehouse. To summarize the comparison, depending on the origin, port, and service rotations, you can expect approximately 7 to 10 days transit time savings from mini-land bridge or all-water service. That is a 25 to 35% transit time savings at an increase in cost of about 25 to 38%. In conclusion, C-Truck is an option to consider when expediting ocean cargo is needed. It is a middle ground alternative between air freight and mini-land bridge service in which door-to-door transit time can be minimized and reduced at a more affordable cost. And it allows the importer to effectively plan cargo arrival to meet their sales demands. Thank you for your time.
I just have to add to that, at Audio VOXX, if you want to air freight something, it's an act of God and a dispensation from the Pope all at the same time. You have to report, the buyers have to report to the CEO, and you better have some good song and dance to do an air freight. And generally, they'll turn around, the CEO will turn around and say, hey, listen, you're not air freighting. If you can convince Pat Moffett to take this C-Truck, I'll go along with it. But other than that, you're not air freighting, so figure another way. I don't care if you have to change dates of ads or whatever you have to do. It's not going to happen. So the buyers will come to me and go, oh, man, please, can you help me out, man? You know, I really need this stuff, man. You know, so C-Truck has become part of an education of a product manager and part of a buyer, and they think along those lines. When we came, I was with my friends Tory Burch last night, and this is a company that really is so into the air freight, it's just the nature of their business that they need to do this. When we purchased RCA, Their air freight bill was $17 million a year. They were air freighting clock radios that were worth $5 FOB, and the air freight was $15. I said, anybody paying attention to what's going on here? You know, there's no margin here at all at the end of all this. And that's where, you know, I said, well, what do you, he said, well, it's 20 days. After 20 days, we have to air freight. We can't, there's no other way to ship with, if we need 20 days in the warehouse. I said, oh, yes, there is. We have this little thing called C-Truck. What's the C-Truck? Now, this is RCA, supposed to be trained people when we acquired them. They had known about this all. The air freight bill dropped down to $300,000 in 1 year because we got them acclimated into using it. Once you start using it and you can work your time frames around it, it starts becoming a way of life. So that's what the good part is, and that's what we try to do. And there'll be probably more acquisitions around the world someday, and we run into the same thing. When I talked to Peter Terschwell, I said, isn't everybody sort of doing this? He said, no, not really. I ran into a whole bunch of people that really don't understand it quite well and looking for an expedited sort of thing. So that's a big part of it too. You have to really acclimate the company to be able to deal with the subject, and that's it. Now, once all of this being said, what Denise and I had mentioned, without the guys on the front lines doing this, if what they do for us, none of this really happens. So let me introduce you to the operations manager for Consolidated Shippers, Mr. Jerry Watkowski. Jerry.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I am C-Truck. We're based out of Seattle, Washington. We're a 3PL company out of Seattle. Been with the company for almost 11 years now, and we've been working with Pat since I've been there, and VOXX, and it's a wonderful relationship. Our main forte out of Seattle is basically LTL. We consolidate small packages as 5 pallets and up, 10 feet of trailer space and up, and head them east, south. We send them everywhere. Our consolidation programs in our warehouse right down in Sumner, Washington, which is south of Seattle. How this coincides with what VOXX does with us is when they bring in containers, we basically consolidate their containers into our team trucks and head them east. As Denise said, you can basically fit a 40 and a 20 into one 53-foot container by consolidating. And we can squeeze them in there pretty darn tight, and we do. We get them as much as we can. Sometimes there's 2 40s that come out of the yard, and you want to do 2 trucks on those 40s, but there's 10 feet of space left on that truck. We're able to actually nose load freight in the front of those trucks, cut costs for VOXX, and there's no delay on delivery whatsoever. Basically, the first stop on that truck is still going to be Plainfield or Norfolk. We just carry on after we deliver that particular shipment to our next destination, and that helps. Like I said, that helps cuts the cost and keeps VOXX happy. Cargo insurance, for high-value loads is a concern for everybody. Most trucks carry about 100,000 to 250,000 cargo insurance. There's exceptions to that. Sometimes we can squeeze another 50,000 out of a trucker, but usually you stick about that rate. If you wanted to go up, you can go up. You got to break out the pocketbook. You can cover yourself for $1 million if you like, but that's up to the customer. CSI basically monitors all insured carriers. We just like to take a peek and make sure everybody's insured all the time before the truck goes out. Last thing you want is something to happen to the truck and the trucker forgot to reinsure his insurance. So we like to monitor that. Our warehouse manager, and this might seem elementary to everybody, but it's really important to making sure deliveries are on time. Starting with before the truck's loaded, make sure the warehouse manager walks around the truck and just checks out simple things like headlights, taillights, tires, mud flaps, and it takes 1 minute. And if he does that, it could save hours of time at night, because if DOT pulls you over for a broken headlight or a bad mud flap, there you go. You're costing yourself. It could cost 8 hours to wait for something to open up to get it replaced, especially if you're sitting in the middle of Wyoming where there's nothing around there. Another thing we do, we like to go inside the trailer and check for leaks and holes. Up in Seattle, that's very, very important. 1 drop of water on a piece of cardboard could basically ruin your trip. So it's real easy to do. We just step in our trailers, we close the doors, and we look for any cracks, any lights, anything coming in from up above, and usually that means it's pretty well sealed. Another way to tell, if you wanted to check, you'd get a little more elaborate on it, you can also take a look at the flooring. Most trucks have wood flooring, and as soon as a drop of water hits a wood floor, you can tell there's a leak that basically holds for a week. Structural integrity of the trailer, doors and locks, another elementary problem, but you know, if you take care of it before the truck leaves, you can save yourself a big headache. Most trucks, when they come in to pick up, have been unloading. Let's say they unload at a different warehouse at 9 o'clock and they're picking up at my warehouse at 1 o'clock. Those guys that are unloading the truck, you know, never can tell what a forklift driver is going to do. They're going to close those doors and send the truck on its merry way. But by the time they get over here to my warehouse, and I've seen doors hanging off by, you know, with nothing holding on anymore. So it's good to check those doors. Any little crack on a hinge could be a security issue, or any problem with the latch could be a security issue. So we also look at that. Driver's license copies for team drivers. It's nice, especially for the customer, to know that these drivers are the same drivers that pick up, they're the same drivers that deliver. And that's comforting. That means they're watching your freight the whole time, and you basically have the same phone numbers if you get phone numbers for the drivers and stuff, and you get those at when you load the truck. Drivers meet operational standards, driver's license, and you'd be surprised how many times you see trucks try and sneak in that aren't legal. And so if you have high value loads, you have to double check that and make sure they're good to go. And there's our mobile phone with satellite tracking. All of our trucks have GPS satellite tracking. So up to hour updates, which is nice. You can check at midnight and you're going to find out where the truck is. GPS goes out a lot. About 1 out of 20 trucks usually lose GPS somewhere along the line. So it's really important to get those phone numbers, and that's why it's kind of really important to make sure the same drivers are the ones that deliver, just to ensure your high value loads are safe and are going to make delivery. VOXX International supplies CSI with intermodal 2 seals manufactured by Titan Brooks. These seals are really neat. They're customs approved, and is the same seals VOXX uses an inbound on their containers coming overseas. And I just happen to have one in my pocket. I like to carry one for safekeeping, just in case I got to seal something. But these seals are really cool. The average seal that people put on their trucks is basically a zip tie, and with a number on it. And it supplies no security whatsoever to your trucks, no security. So these are really neat. These are actually steel interlocks, and once they go on the clamp, they're not coming off. And most thieves think, okay, I can carry a lock bolt or a bolt cutter or something. These are so tight on those latches, and I don't even know if you guys know that, but that you can't get a lock cutter in there. It takes a cable cutter, and most thieves don't carry a cable cutter. So this seal actually secures the back of the trailer, and it's a godsend for keeping things safe. All seals carry a special VOXX code. Most seals do. It carries codes for their customers. Like I said, not all seals are security seals. The seal is available in several colors. VOXX likes to use that just so I think it's a visual for when the trucks come in, they can actually see what month this actually came out or what week it came out, just a visual for deliveries. One call for all, this is the conclusion. CSI has worked with VOXX for years, and we appreciate all their business, and we do a lot of team loads for many customers heading east out of Seattle. We accommodate shippers such as VOXX for all their domestic shipping needs. We do peer pickups, drayage. We dray to the warehouse. As Denise said, there's no problem with chassis in Seattle. I think I've heard of one in my 11 years, and we were able to fix that in about an hour. We de-van, transload. That's when we consolidate it into our trucks. Securing team trucks is, that's already done. Especially when we know that containers are coming in, we already have these empty trailers sitting in our parking lot back to the dock waiting for their containers to come in so we can do it nice and fast and get it out. Door-to-door tracking and tracing, that's a GPS and cell phones and stuff, so we're on it. Whenever Denise or Pat needs to know about where the truck is, they can call me or they can check the computer, whatever they want to do. I'm happy to help, and I appreciate all your time, guys. Thank you very much. Any questions at all, feel free to give me an ask or pick up a card, give me a call. We also have a website you can check out if you want a little more information. And I appreciate your time very much. Thanks very much. Go Seahawks.
The tracking and tracing part, what Jerry does is a very key event for us because the Indianapolis facilities is 300,000 square feet, and Norfolk, Virginia is about 500,000 square feet, with trucks going in and out all the time. So when Jerry knows that the truck is within 4 hours of the facility, he's on the phone with that receiving manager who all know is from Denise what's on that truck and the crew he's going to need, especially because we go through that loose load just about everything, and we don't use pallets, so we have to make sure we have the right crew to move this. And when I go to these warehouses and I'll take a look in the building, I look at airway bills to see when was this air freighted, and if it was air freighted a month ago, what the hell is it doing in this building? And I can also track the same things from our contract numbers on containers. Is somebody using sea truck that really didn't have to use it when they could have used all water? So we do a lot of follow-up things behind it to make sure our buyers aren't fibbing on us at all. But Jerry's contact with the receiving managers is very important because we time the delivery, they clear the decks of whatever they're doing, and we get that trailer right in and get them right out. And there were some points that we had so much cargo coming in at one of the very peak periods before Chinese New Year. We actually had a convoy going from Seattle to Norfolk, Virginia. So I said, boy, we're really getting out of control with this now, you know. We're going to film a movie out of the sea truck, you know. So, but they do a great job, and Jerry, thanks very much.
No, thank you.
Terrific.
Thanks again, everybody.
Do we have any questions from you folks? Jason?
Just for you guys, I'm just interested to know, the seat-to-truck program sounds extremely encouraging, filled with lots of advantages, but I'm concerned about loss, damage during the process.
You got a microphone coming down, AJ's.
Right. Good morning, everybody. You see the truck program does sound extremely encouraging, and you've noted quite a few advantages. I'm concerned, though, about loss, damage during the process.
Well, we really haven't had anything in the way of freight claims, nothing outstanding that I can recall. And of course, the seal system, it's already tracked back to what we have to look at a little bit more closely. There was one damage situation which, as I speak to you now, I can say it was funny, but it wasn't very funny at the time. Back in around 1986 or so, Bruce Hebner, who's the president of Consolidated Shippers, Jerry's boss, he called me up and he said, I have a little problem. You know, I said, oh, well, what is it? You know? He said, a mini land bridge train hit your sea truck in Ohio. So it's like, what? You know, it couldn't have been an oil car train. It had to be a mini land bridge train to make me look bad, you know. Well, of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. Didn't have cameras. You had cameras, but you didn't have a way to send them through the airwaves, pictures, so we could identify the situation. So Jerry Bruce said, you know what, I really don't think it was too bad. The driver was not hurt, which we were more concerned about anything. No loss of life. He was just a little shaken up. He said, but you know, it actually couldn't have been too bad because they got another trailer that they sent in, the company, and he said they reloaded everything back onto the trailer. And I said, well, that's okay then. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it just kind of hit the back of the trailer or something and knocked it off the road, and they were able to unload the goods, and we'd have something saleable at the end of all this. So I heard the shipment was coming in and was out in Hauppauge. So I went out to the dock to see the trailer, and they opened up the back doors, and it was nothing but all the VOXX merchandise. The only problem was it was in hefty bags, and it had been smashed to smithereens, and there was no piece bigger than this. That was all we had of a car stereo, you know. So after getting all excited saying, well, we got something we can salvage here, you know, we got hit by a train. So we just took the trailer and went right to the dump, and that was our biggest damage that we ever had since. And we recovered for it. It was just one of those things that, you know, you hear about these all the time. You know, this truck stalled out on the track, and, you know, here comes the train. There's nothing I can do. But there was nothing else. It was all in hefty bags. So we disposed of the entire thing. But other than that, yes, Peter?
Pat, I'm still not clear on why, what's the difference between using sea truck, transloading at the Port of Seattle, and going east, and why not just ship a container straight to Indianapolis and then transload there?
Well, there are a couple of issues there. First of all, most of these containers are foreign containers, and you can't use them for interstate commerce. Once you've transloaded them, that's considered a domestic move. And the ocean carriers, they don't want containers in Indianapolis because they have no way to turn them back the other way. So they kind of discourage that sort of idea. As far as translating the Port of Seattle, we did that for a while, but the port was very, very busy with so many other things, and you know, we were one of a number of companies that were doing it. We wanted to get our own operation. we were customers of the Port of Seattle in their program, back with Steve, before Steve got there. We used their LTL programs for a while. We had a warehouse in Seattle, and it just seems like things click. But we wanted something that was more dynamic for our specific needs, and we wanted to get out of the kind of the riffraff of being caught up in, hundreds of trailers doing the transloading sort of thing. Yay? Yes, sir.
We've heard through the week that with bigger vessels coming to the Port of Los Angeles, there could be up to 4 days before some containers come off the ship. What does that do for the business model if you have to use Los Angeles?
I'm a little trouble hearing you. The Port of Los, doing this through the Port of Los Angeles?
You talk about one of the reasons you use Seattle is containers are available faster from the vessel,
Yes.
and you prefer not to use Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach if
Well,
there's a longer delay. We've heard this week that with bigger vessels, there could be some containers still on the vessel 4 days after the vessel arrives in port. Now, what does that do to this business model?
I don't know how we say that.
Well,
You clear on what he said?
yeah, I mean, we don't usually, as I had mentioned, we don't usually ship through LA for sea truck service. We plan in advance. We'll plan it so that it discharges in Seattle, but sometimes if we need to divert, we will, and we just have to work around when it becomes available. So that's why I said you don't get the same expediting benefits, but it can still be done.
And one of the things we learned yesterday, too, at the chassis situation, where there's a couple of thousand chassis at one pier, none at another pier, they still have to balance all that out. And we don't seem to have that problem in Seattle. And we had a warehouse there, as I said, one day that we used for distribution, and for other reasons, we moved on to different locations. But it's just something about the Port of Seattle that clicks. We don't get VOXX exams, and that seems to happen on a repeated basis down here, even though we're CT-PAT members. So I haven't been too happy about the way Port Customs really works with us here. I think that could be improved quite a bit.
Talk a little bit about your East Coast operations. I know you come in with what is it, speakers and headrests in through Jacksonville, is it?
Yeah, we have, one of our divisions is called Envision, and what they do is they build speakers for the motor car companies for General Motors and Chrysler of Canada. So we build the actual headrest right there. We get the monitors from Malaysia, usually with APL has a good transit time, CMH, CGM does pretty well. But we have now moved more into the OEM world, and our retail kind of items have come down a little bit. So that's what they do out there, and it's a very dynamic system, and you have such a muster level to pass to do business with Ford or Chrysler and GM that it has to be an absolute persistent thing, and we do run some loads down there. And that was another group that was air freighting their suits to the cleaners. I mean, these guys were, there's some heavy-duty $800,000 shipments that were just, a deep, deep weight, and they were losing money on all these things. And again, that's what we said to them. This was a very popular company before we bought it, and they just ran out of cash. And one of the reasons they ran out of cash is because they were air freighting everything that they did. When they did that, they air freighted goods in, put it in the car, sold it to Ford, Ford sent them a check, they run back, get some more air freight moving in. It was a vicious cycle, it was going nowhere. VOXX came in with its kind of buying power and said, instead of buying 50 of these headrests and putting them in for Ford, we're going to buy 10,000 of these monitors with these headrests, and we're going to do it that way. So that's a very dynamic race, and that's now expanding. We're getting a new building down there, and we'll probably have some kind of a feed from Seattle down to there as well. Since we happen to mention Envision, the largest freight claim in the history of VOXX took place between Jacksonville and our factory in Orlando, and it was $900,000 of monitors, $940,000 in a 45-foot container. And the driver conveniently parked the trailer halfway between Jacksonville and Orlando at a Home Depot parking lot. And his wife happened to live in the same town, so he wanted to go home and visit the wife for a while. And he left everything there. Of course, when he came back, everything was gone. We were notified by the FBI on Friday that the trailer has been found. It's been missing since November. Reason being that when you do things with Envision, whoever is behind these steps is probably reading the cargo manifest somehow, and what they're seeing is a 10-inch monitor. A 10-inch monitor, and there's like thousands of these things on this trailer. Oh my God, we hit the mother load of televisions, you know. So they get all excited, thinking they're going to move this stuff to Mexico. It's going to be a quick resale. And what happens in the end result is they open one of these boxes, and you pull out a monitor with about 80 wires coming out the back. This is completely useless, and there's no place you can do anything with it except put it in a headrest. So they just closed the box, shut the trailer, and left it there, and then the FBI found it. So sometimes what you see on a cargo manifest isn't truly what you're getting. In the other part of Los Angeles too, there are times when we have kind of a sort of a forced sea truck where we're going to divert cargo. A buyer sells something while it's on the water and says, can you stop this thing? I really need this somewhere in Tucson or something. So on that case, we have a facility that we use in LA and transloaded but do basically the same thing. But that happens maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And we've already set up just in case the longshoreman thing doesn't go the way we heard it might in July, that there won't be a strike, there won't be a job action. They should have a settlement between July 15th and the 31st. We've already set up a facility in Vancouver, which would be run by Consolidated Shipping, and we'll sea truck over Vancouver. Mr. Leach.
Thought I'd throw out one more question.
Sure.
What's the comparison between, I'll call it this sea truck option and an expedited rail intermodal option? UPS runs its expedited trains in the Midwest. And there are other ones that are sort of like that, and it's a service that could be created by the railroads if they wanted to really get aggressive and move into that. Have you done a comparison?
If there was something, I mean, I don't see, it doesn't match, we tried a few, and it doesn't match the transit time by far, and it doesn't have the traceability that we seem to get from them. But certainly, you know, I would have Consolidated Shippers, we still may look into that and say, well, listen, let's give this a look, you know, and if you're doing things like that, certainly we would consider it, certainly we would consider it. But I just don't want to be back on a mini Lambridge train and, you know, and then drag through all that again. But we have tried a few times, and the transit times just weren't there. But the door is always open to keep looking at things. We're always doing that, and trying to cut costs. You know, I mean, even now, what we have on the fuel is some pretty high numbers on the fuel when we're coming across on the sea truck. It's a big number out of that bill that we pay.
If there are no more questions, we might as well wrap it up. But I want you to give a big hand to our panelists here today. It was a really informative session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you. Thank you.